Hi, welcome back. Here in our part 3 of our lesson 10.1. In this video, we are going to learn about how to write an equation for an exponential function. The information could be given to you in a lot of different formats, as we discussed earlier. It could be given to you as a graph. It could be given to you as a table of values. It could be given to you as just 2 points. Or it could be given to you as a verbal description. So first we're going to look at how to write an equation when the graph of the exponential function is given to you. So every time I'm going to start with my standard equation, which is f of x equal to a times b to the power of x. So if I knew what a and b are, they are constant numbers, right? So these numbers, if I knew these numbers, I'm just going to plug those numbers in my equation and I get my equation for that particular situation or that particular function. So let's go ahead and take a look at the graph that I have from which I have to write the equation for my function. So I have my graph here. This is an exponential function. As you can see, it's a decreasing function. All right. So not all exponential functions are decreasing. This particular function is decreasing because it started at a higher value, and every time as the x goes up and up, your y goes down and down, right? So it's decreasing all the time. So I take a look at this. I'm going to write an equation in the format y equal to a times b to the power of x. So a is my y-intercept and b is the common ratio between two consecutive y values. All right. So as you can see from the graph, my y-intercept is right there, which is 3. So my a is 3. So I'm going to put that in my equation first. So I have f of x equal to 3 times b to the power of x. I still don't know what b is. Now I go back and I look at it. So to figure out my b, I need two consecutive y values. I look at these 2 points or these 2 points or these 2 points, but I need to know what that number is. So I'm going to choose 2 points for which the point is clear to me, meaning I don't have to make a guesswork to figure out what that number is. So these 2 points are right there on the crosshair. So I'm going to choose y equal to 3 and y equal to 2, right? So these 2 are my points. So as we know, our common ratio is how your y is changing. How your y is changing. From this y to this y, it is getting multiplied by a common ratio. So that's what gives you that value of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 3 times b, is giving me the value of 2, right? So, and x is 1. We know that x is 1, right? So y is 2. I know a is 3. I don't know what b is. And I know that x is 1, right? So I just plugged in those values. Now I can easily figure out using this equation, I can figure out what b is. So b to the power of 1 is b. So all I have is 2 equal to 3b. To figure out b, all I have to do is divide by 3. I get b is 2/3. As we saw, for my decreasing function, my b is a fraction, which is less than 1. So we got that. So our function, if I put these 2 things back into my function, my f of x will be equal to 3 times 2/3 to the power of x. So I wrote my exponential equation for that given function. So this is when you are given a graph. All you can do is pick the y-intercept and choose 2 consecutive points and see how your y is changing, and you can see what it is getting multiplied by, and you can plug in those values and figure out your b. So the second situation is when the information is given to you in the form of a table. So here also, these are nothing but your points on the graph, right? So you can create a graph and do what we did earlier, or we can use our idea about our table and then find my equation. I can write my equation. Here also I'm going to start with f of x equal to a times b to the power of x. I know a is my y-intercept. So I look at my table and see if my y-intercept is given to me. So one of these points, is it my y-intercept? I know the y-intercept is the value of y when x is 0, right? So the value of y when x is 0 is 1. So my a is 1. Alright, so I'm going to plug that into my equation. F of x equals 1 times b to the power of x. Still have to figure out what b is. B is the common ratio between two consecutive y values. So either I take these two values and see how it is changing. It's getting multiplied by a number every time, right? It's getting multiplied by a number. And also you can see that my y values are going on decreasing as in when my x values increases. So this is also a decreasing function. So my b has to be correct. It's a fraction which is less than 1. Alright, so I have two consecutive y values. I could either choose these two, or these two, or these two, or these two, right? It has to be two consecutive. So I have 8 and 4. What multiplied by 8 is going to give me a 4. So common sense tells me that it's a half. So 8 times half is going to be a 4. I'm going to check 4 times half. Is it 2? Of course. 2 times half is 1. 1 times half is half. So I have b is 1 over 2. Okay. So if you can't figure it out, this is an easy one to figure it out, right? So I can see clearly that it is half of 8, right? But if you can't figure it out, all I can do is I can go ahead and see how it is changing. 4 over 8, right? So this is my y2. This is my y1. So as I go from left to right, this is my first point that I'm going to encounter. This is the second point. This is the third point, fourth point, fifth point, right? So it's always unidirectional, not like your linear function where whichever way you go, your slope is going to be the same, right? But in this case, it's not going to be the same. It is unidirectional. Either it comes from above and goes down, or it starts from down and it goes up. So it has to be unidirectional. You always have to go from left to right. So I'm going from left to right. This is my first point, that is y1. This is my second value, that's my y2. So my ratio is always y2 over y1. Alright, it's always y2 over y1, which is 4 over 8, which is also half, right? So b is half. So I could figure that out like that. Or I could take a point and plug it in. My x is, say I'm going to choose this point. It's easy because it gives me a power of 1. So I have this point, I'm going to plug it in. When x is 1, y is half, right? After this point, I'm going to say y is half, b I don't know, and x is 1. So b to the power of 1 is b. So half is 1b, or b is half. So I know b is half and a is 1. Now I can go ahead and write my function. My function is f of x equal to 1 times half to the power of x. So that's my function that is associated with this set of table values. All right. Now let's take a look at these set of table of values. All right. So here I have a second set of table. Earlier in this table, I knew that this is an exponential function because clearly I am seeing there is a common ratio, right? From 8 to 4, it's half of that. Now it's half of that, and half of that. So I'm clearly seeing a pattern of a common ratio, an exponential pattern that is going on in my set of values. So before I start to write an equation, unless it is specified to you that it is an exponential function, I need to make sure that it is an exponential function, or whichever function that I am writing an equation for. First of all, I have to make sure that that's exactly what the function is. Okay. So in this case, these are no ordinary numbers that I usually come across. They're all decimal numbers. I'm not really sure what they are. So I want to make sure whether they are exponential function in the first place. Okay. So if it is an exponential function, my y values are going to have a common ratio between them. All right. The consecutive y values will have a common ratio. So I want to know what the common ratio is. As we saw earlier, my common ratio, I'm always going to go from left to right. My x has to be in the increasing order. And my common ratio is the ratio between two consecutive y values, how my y is changing. So this is my final value When I go from 1 to 2, this is the new value and that is the old value, right? So this is my second value, which is y2, and this is my first value, which is y1. So my common ratio is b equal to y2 over y1, which is 6.4 over 8 is going to give me 0.8. I know that's a common ratio between this and this, right? That's the ratio between this and this. Is it common for everybody? That's why it's called common ratio. The ratio between these two y values is 0.8. Is the ratio between these two y values is also 0.8? The ratio between these two values, is it also 0.8? That's what makes it a common ratio, right? So I'm going to check. So 5.12, if I choose these 2 points, now this becomes my y2 and this is my y1. So 5.12 divided by 6.4 is still 0.8. Let's check. 4.096 divided by 5.12. If you want to use a calculator, you can use a calculator and check it. Okay, I know these are multiples of 8, so powers of 8, so I'm going to just go ahead and do it. Okay, so this is 0.8. So I see that the ratio between the y values is common, so it's a common ratio. So this is in fact an exponential function. So once I know it is an exponential function, I can clearly go ahead and write my equation. My equation, I'm starting with f of x equals a times b to the power of x. As we know, a is your y-intercept and b is your common ratio. We already figured out what that common ratio is. And a is your y-intercept. In your previous example, we saw that the table of values had your y-intercept already present in your set of values. So you use that straight away. But in this set of values, you don't have your y-intercept readily available in that set of values. So I still have to go ahead and figure out what it is, all right? But I'm going to plug in the one that I already know. So my f of x is equal to a times 0.8 to the power of x. I still have to figure out what a is. So there are a lot of ways that you can do it. Just use common sense and you can figure it out. So in my exponential function, I said it is unidirectional, right? It is one way path. You have to go from left to right in the ascending order of your x values, okay? So when I go from left to right, to get from this value to this y value, I got to multiply by a 0.8. When I go from this value to this value, again I'm multiplying it by a 0.8. When I go from this value to this value, again I'm multiplying it by a 0.8, right? So if I go forward, I'm multiplying it by a 0.8. But now I want to get to 0, x equal to 0, which is 1 point behind, 1 point before this 1, right? So this is 1 before this 1. So I'm going backwards now to figure out what it is. So to go backwards, instead of multiplying, I have to divide by 0.8. So I can figure out what that value is. So if I divide 8 by 0.8, I'm going to get a value of 10. So my y-intercept is 10. That's one way to figure it out. But now I can figure it out in another way. I can use one of these points and I can plug it in for x and y. Alright. So one of the points I have is 1, 8. I can use that point and plug it in the value for x and y. Remember, we did the same thing for our y-intercept in your y equal to mx plus b. We used a point to plug in for x and y and figured out what b was once we figured out what the slope is. So here I have this point given to me. I'm going to plug in the values for y. I don't know the value of a. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I know my b and my x value is 1. So anything raised to the power of 1 is the same number. So 8 is equal to a times 0.8. Now to figure out a, all I have to do is divide by 0.8, divide by 0.8. Alright, so that's what we did right there, divide by 0.8. So I have a is equal to 10. So you got your a value, you got your b value. Now I can go ahead and write my function. F of x equals 10 times 0.8 to the power of x. So that's writing an equation from a given set of table of values. All right. So we did how to write a function from a graph.